Is it Wednesday?
It's 24th.
Almost August.
Yeah.
It's almost fourth year for Charlie.
Yeah. I know.
Isn't
Trust me, he knows too.
Isn't that crazy?
Goes by so fast, man.
I've said this several times, but I literally remember being up there after you got drafted. We were,
Yeah.
like talking about the draft.
Yeah, was it that? That's right.
I literally remember that sitting in the room up there on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Go back into the archives, people. It's crazy.
Yeah,
We're at 198 today too.
Really?
Almost 200 episodes in.
Wow. Yeah, we're humming along.
Consistency.
Yeah, no doubt.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the PowerTech online membership program. If you've been listening to Andy and I wondering, hey, how are they able to get all this podcast content out there? Well, that's because of our members. For just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our online video library, including hundreds of videos of Coach Andy teaching, and have the option for consultation calls with Andy or myself to go over anything you need. We can cover training, nutrition, coaching, parenting, agents, the junior college hockey path, whatever's of interest to you. You'll also be able to participate in our popular Ask Me Anything episodes, have access to special discount codes, and be given priority for any PowerTech in-person camps or events. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Visit powertechhockey.ca/memberships or find the link in the description of this video to learn more. So I have a couple things. First, so a contrast. Last couple weeks, so I have this girls group that I was telling you about. That I actually really like.
Well, when they're in the gym, they look like they're actually focused and
Okay, so
working hard.
So they're U18. I think it would be AA. I don't think there's a AAA for girls. I think it's U18 AA is the highest level. So they're very good at listening.
Yep.
Very good at listening, and they follow instructions to a T. Almost all of them get it. In fact, it's like almost like, "Hey, Eric, like shut up, we get it."
Yeah.
Like, because I'm a yapper, right?
Yeah. Well, you're detailed and you want it done properly.
Like it was, I did a demo yesterday, and the one girl, I was like, "Does that make sense what I said?" And one girl goes, "Well, yeah, like you could have done it with way less words too." Like I'm just talking too much. So what I noticed, the reason I'm bringing this up is because they follow instructions too well. So when I give them a drill, they have to, because I had them on the ice after they're in the gym, and they do exactly what I say every time, and there's no deviation. So and this is a frustration that the coach has expressed to me too. They can't be creative. They just don't know how to be creative.
Right on.
So that was something I knew going into the program that I designed for them. So I have built into the program drills where they're not allowed to follow my instructions. So I did the one drill I did with them. Actually, remember the 3-shot, the mirror drill? So like player picks the puck up in the corner, the other shooter's at the dot, get it out to them, one shot. Then they go to the other side behind the net, player skates over to the other dot. It's like that mirror drill. So I explained to them exactly how to do it, and I was like, everybody got it? We're all good? Yeah, we get it. Okay. You have to do it a different way than what I just showed you. So that's literally the drill.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I showed them exactly how to do the drill, and I said, you can't do it this way. You have to do something different than what I just showed you. So this pattern, you can't do it. You have to do something else. And they can't do it. They can't think like, okay, how do I do something else? It's like, well, I didn't know I could go to the corner to get the puck. I was like, I said you could do anything. I said you can do whatever you want. The only rule is that you can't do what I said. Like that's the rule, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is because with the boys, I have the opposite issue where you got drill busters, guys that just can't figure out what you're talking about. So on the one hand, I want to kind of talk about the contrast a little bit, because on the one hand, for the boys, in general, obviously there's exceptions on both sides, but in general, they are more difficult to teach the first time, but they have a little bit better sense of creativity and improvisation and these kinds of things from what I notice. And then on the flip side, the girls are really, really good at doing a system or following an instruction, and they can't figure out how to read plays properly. So I guess first thing would be any general thoughts about that, number one. And then second thing is I kind of want to get into a conversation about like creativity in general, and then how to coach it. So the example I just gave you about the drill, where here's the drill, you can't do this. That was just one thing I thought about, particular to this group, because that was something that they need to work on. So what kind of strategies, it could be, and it doesn't matter, boys, girls, whatever. When you're trying to teach a player how to make plays or how to see the ice or how to see plays, how do you go about teaching that? And then I have like we'll see where that goes because I have like another thing I want to get to at the end, kind of what we tailed on last week. So opening remarks about that in general.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, if the construction wasn't going on right now, we'd have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Man, am I hot right now?
Sweating? I know.
Yeah. Am I getting furnace face? Oh,
I
man.
still have it from running this morning.
I feel like it. Well, first of all, one observation is I would agree for the most part that any experience I've had teaching girls is they listen to a T for the most part. Like a higher percentage of them really, really pay attention to every little detail and try to do exactly what we say. So, which is good. And I would agree also that when you have guys with their brains are all over the place, sometimes you got to say it 10 times. And, and why is that? I don't know. Like, do boys just from the evolution of hockey, do they just think they know how to play hockey? I don't know. But that is a correct example or a correct statement that you said for the most part. And now, when I say that, I can't really speak to I can't really speak to girls hockey at a really high level, or I shouldn't say really high level, like a volume of girls.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Mine
mine
is
is experience. My experiences with boys. So the limited experience I've had with girls hockey is yes, they do tend to at least pay attention better and try to please, which would appear is like try to do it the right way, pleasing the coach. So I would agree with that. Now, as far as how do you correct that, is that basically the question? How do you get them to think more?
One
creativity?
way, yeah, creativity is what I want. That's kind of the theme I want to talk about. It's like how do you coach? And like I said, boys, girls, whatever. How do you coach that? Like how do you? So the example I gave you with the drill, that's one example of me trying to coach that. Like I'm trying to get them to think about that stuff. So what are your thoughts about that piece?
And that's what it is getting them to think. That's exactly what it is. It's getting them to think is the answer. But if you go back to like a general statement of hockey, whether you're a girl or a boy, um, where you want the structure or um, the less thinking, like as far as creativity, okay, let's call it less creativity. Where you want that is to be anything defensively orientated. So I would say like you want your kids to be less creative in the defensive zone, or when you're even when the other team has the puck and you're defending even from the offensive zone back to the neutral zone. Now you have to have more of a defensive mindset. So I wouldn't want them to veer too much from the defensive structure or responsibilities. But when you get the puck in the offensive zone, I think a lot of people make a mistake in coaching in trying to get them to do A, B, and C. Now, having said that, you could have, maybe it's you're coming in and you want a hard rim and someone go get the puck. That's a set play that goes from there. But once you have the puck, limiting creativity by having too much structure or thinking for them is a no-no. So I think when you get the puck in the offensive zone, or you're going to make plays, because things happen so fast too. Things happen fast, and the player sees what they see. I think it's teaching moments, but I don't think it's necessarily has to be structure. So that would be my rule: is like defensive zone, follow the rules. Good for you. Don't veer from it too much. And then of course there's little things, right? Like if it's, you know, weak side winger is here and defenseman's here in the defensive zone and the puck goes here. It's like you have to read a little bit, but like there's that structure that has to be there. In the offensive zone, it's like, hey, if you think you can take it to the net, shoot and score, then go for it. Right. And what you see on the bench on a 2-on-1 might not be what the player sees on that same 2-on-1. Or you might think they have a lot of time or a little bit of time. You would have made maybe an opposite play to that, or it's always two people on the puck, but maybe in this situation, no, that someone backs out and they get themselves open. So I think you can overcoach that way.
Right. So like a couple things I've been doing of late, and then you can kind of let me know what you think of it or what you're doing. Is because I'm big with like you are with small area games, mostly because honestly, because it just makes the players more engaged. I think that's like the primary thing I like about it. It's good for like the skill development and all that shit, but it's like it just makes the practice better. They just like it more. They're more engaged. They have more life to it. So I tried to do like, for example, yesterday I did almost like a 2-on-2 kind of entry drill, and then I turned that into a low to high 2-on-2 drill, where it was from a more structured like practice drill into more of like a competitive little game situation. So I try to break it up where in the drill that we're doing, I explain where the creativity comes into play. So like on an entry, I was explaining to them yesterday, like if depending on the defenseman's gap, that's kind of going to dictate what your decision is, right? One element. The other elements can be what your partner's doing, like what the second forward is doing. So I'm trying to show them, okay, so on this drill, look for these few things, and then go. Now let's go do the drill. Then we go right from that to our 2-on-2 little game drill, and then I'll stop the game and be like, hey, like this is what we just did in the drill, right? So, um, as one example of just again trying to promote the creativity, I took a couple of the girls and I said, okay, on our regroup for the second 2-on-2, all I want you to do is get on side. This is the person with the puck. You get on side, and then I want you to follow your partner around, like follow the other forward around, like skate right behind them, and just watch all the confusion that happens, right? And they're like, what do you mean, like just skate behind them? So I had one girl say to me, well, they're just gonna skate away from me. And I'm just like, yeah, no shit. Like this is what happens, right? You make the D collapse, your partner thinks I have to get away from you to get into space, and it just causes problems. So, what do you think about kind of that structure to like a practice kind of plan, follow one by a game, or what kind of strategies do you use to make more promote that creativity kind of concept, or is it always just kind of built in where you're not really thinking about it that deep?
I think well, first of all, to go back to your point is the players are more engaged. I don't care what level you are, right? You're more engaged
With
if you're
the
playing
small
a
air
game.
games, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
every
yeah,
kid,
yeah, for
every
sure.
age. It's like,
That's pros, man.
yeah,
Like everyone.
it's
Yeah.
can we do something competitive and compete and score goals and defend and try to make plays. So that's a natural. So you're yeah. So if you're ever in doubt, if you play small area games, go for it. And there's just learning in that. It, I shouldn't say that necessarily. There is learning in that, but that depends on how engaged people are too, right? I mean, some players play and they don't see the concept of anything, right? But and some players are looking at just making plays. But I think um, when you go into whatever small area game you have, if you have like a focus as air conditioning, if you have a focus on like let's say you're playing a cross ice 3-on-3, and the focus is not to get scored on, and you're playing a man on man, or you're playing two on a puck, or really emphasizing loose pucks, and that's a little bit of structure there. um, but I think in general, when you're playing small area games, it's just about your own creativity, and let it just happen, and the kids that are engaged are going to do it, and the kids that aren't.
How important do you think it is to have the small area game contribute to the thing you're trying to teach? Because
Oh,
one thing,
I mean,
because like just one thing I think is an issue for coaches, because everyone talks about doing small area games and coaches like to do them, whatever. But if you let every small area game just be a freewheel, then there's not a lot of teaching that's going to happen. So are they going to learn the thing? You
yeah.
know?
So for example, you take the power play game, right? So you go on one side, you have 3 against 2 or 4 against 3, and then the other side is just flip the colors around. Then obviously you're working on the defensive side and you're working on power play. So yes, if you're teaching that stuff, then it applies. Another game you could do is like a 3-on-3, where you have 3 guys defending, 3 guys come in, and the goal is to play 3-on-3. You could do it with more guys too, right? But you play, so the defensive team, their only job is to defend and get it out to their team, so that you flip the colors, right? The offense becomes a defense, and then whatever. So I think in those situations, you can design games definitely that you could teach something and have a small area game that applies to it, which is, I think, awesome, because it's real time. It's not like, okay, the puck is set here and here we go and stop it if something doesn't go right. You can see mistakes happen, and you can see effort, and and then in certain drills like that, you can actually make corrections as you go. But if you put an emphasis on something, 100%. So same, just flip it to offense. If you're doing those things and you see 3-on-2, 3-on-3s, 3-on-2s happening all the time, and you never see that middle lane drive ever, because they're just horsing around. Like that's definitely a correction. So like within the freedom of playing the offensive side, you can still obviously point out, we haven't had one guy go to the net to make a play. We've never seen um, shooting for low pads for rebounds and stuff like that. So definitely you can. There is just definitely teachable moments.
Yeah. I think the other part too that I find important is especially if you're a knowledgeable coach, like for coaches that don't know a whole lot, it's not necessarily the same, but the tendency to want to overcoach, I find myself getting caught with that too, particularly with this group, because I want to harp on these things with this group of girls so much. I actually find it difficult to not stop the play or not stop the drill, but that's a mistake because they're gonna start to just say, man, like I just wanna do the drill or I just want to play now. Like you've said 100 things today, like let us play. So I think that's another thing to be cautious of um, when you're trying to do the teaching part, because if you keep the more you talk, the less they're gonna listen. So I find that for me personally as a yapper, just like trying to not overdo it. And then it's funny because I even have like their coaches on the ice with me, and I can see them also they want to just keep saying stuff, and you just can't. You just can't do it, man. You have to be able to pick what you want to focus on today because everything's going to be a correction. Like their kids learning how to play, they're in the prime of their development. You can't do everything in one shot, you know? So what other things like I want to get back to like the creativity thing now, like being able to teach kids how to make plays or see plays. I had one example yesterday where we were doing it was a 2-on-0 entry. Like there was obstacles as defenders instead of a defender, but it could have been a 2-on-1 or whatever. And it was just from the blue line in. And I was trying to get them to do kind of a pot play to the slot, and then the player would go to the other side of the net and make a longer pass, try to find a seam. So it was like a 2-pass kind of offensive drill. And little things like getting yourself in a good position to receive a pass or delaying a little bit so you have a little bit more space. And it's like these subtle think the game things that I know it's not just that's not just this group. That's girls and boys across the board. Um, where like how do you feel about teaching that? How much do you think you can teach it? And what kind of examples or results have you seen with guys where you're like, okay, he is now seeing how to understand how plays develop or how to find those lanes or whatever? Like even if you use Charlie as an example, did he always just get it, or were there kids that um, you could see that development happen where it was like, okay, now they're kind of seeing where to be? Does that make sense?
Okay, so yeah, so to be very honest with you, youth levels, I find very few kids actually get hockey, and
Okay,
that's
that's an
yeah,
interesting point.
that's
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason why very few people. Yeah, I mean, if you eliminate size, desire, all those things, a lot of people just don't understand the game, and that's an interest thing, or it's like they're having fun, and it's like they want to be good, but it's only good at certain things, and you're gonna fight that battle. So I would say that I always go back to when I was when my kid was 8 and they were in a tournament and they were playing Newmarket, and I went, "Who is that kid?" And I found out Charlie's first year in junior that it was Easton Cowan, or not. Sorry, I'm sorry, Denver Barkey. He had it. You know what I mean? It was there. He could skate. He can and he could skate through the whole team, but he would also make plays that other people couldn't see. Well, how do you teach someone to be like Wayne Gretzky? You don't, right? You don't. You just don't teach that. So I think that some guys are limited based on, and whatever the reason is, I don't know. Um, but I find the kids, and sometimes when someone's just a good skater, can stick handle, and they have the tools, sometimes they're just more engaged because they are good. So it's easier to say, okay, if I do this, I'll be better. And then you get the opposite, where you get a kid that just the only way that he is going to get better is if he actually really dials in something to make himself better. So, but I would say a general statement would be, if a kid has like an understand, like he just kind of gets the game early, you can work with them a lot. I don't know if that's rocket science or anything. But the thing about teaching all this stuff is that I always think it comes back to, like just let's just say, like, let's say you're working cycling, you're teaching cycles. So if you all of a sudden say, okay, now we're going to cycle. Okay, I'm just keeping it really simple here. Now we're going to cycle, but on the third cycle, we're going to do a long cycle behind the net or right to the other side, just for example. And if you just say that, then what they do is they do 1, 2, 3, and maybe they screw it up or whatever. But then the long cycle will happen. And let's say they do it correctly, and that's fine. But what you've done is you just said, here's what you're going to do next. You didn't tell them why. And if kids understand why, then that maybe then naturally that long cycle will happen, and they'll do it through communication on their own, right? Because if you just go um, cycle and then on the third one or second one do a long cycle, then it's just a drill with a number and whatever, but there's no thinking. So but if you explain, like, the reason that we do a cycle is because there's pressure, and you bring a guy up a wall or down a wall, whatever, and then you pull it back. Now they have to scramble a little bit, and then you do that once. You do that, and if you see an opening, go to the net. Well, there's another issue. A lot of times guys cycle and they don't know. There's lanes to the net. I see this a lot. There's lanes to the net where they can just go, and they don't because, oh, we're cycling. Do you see what I mean? So there's another teachable thing. It's like, okay, now we cycle for this. So if you go into, let's say you don't even get to a cycle because there's a lane to the net, take it. That's creativity. If you're going on if you're the first one to get a cycle and there's a lane to the net, take it. Or there's another guy opened in the slot or whatever, use it. That's creativity. That's the play to make. So the reason that you're doing a cycle, let's say, is to create some space and some confusion and to open up some lanes. So you don't do it 3 times or 4 times or do it just to do it. You do it with a purpose. So if you have a why and the kids understand why you're doing it, so now if we're cycling for this amount of time, like a couple times, and you're seeing nothing happening, then let's get someone for a long cycle or bring it up high, whatever. Like, I'm just throwing an example of that out, right? It's like no different than if you're working a power play, right? Let's just say, because some guys have a 4-second rule or a 3-pass rule or whatever. Well, if it's a 3-pass rule, and let's say a 3-pass rule and you have to shoot, or a 4-pass rule and you have to shoot, and there's 4 shin pads in front of you, like, you're a robot. You're not thinking,
Yeah.
right? You're shooting because shoot if there's a little bit of
Yeah,
time,
right.
and there's traffic or
If there's
whatever,
a shot,
right?
right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, so I got, like, basically the moral of the story for me with when it comes to creativity things, you have to give the players the freedom to do unstructured things and, like, an experiment. So sometimes even for me, because I can still do the drills that I'm asking, which is important. If you can't do that, then it's makes it harder. But we did the one drill where I asked them to not follow what I said. So I went as an example and just did the most ridiculous, stupid shit that I could do. So I would, like, skate behind the net. I try to, like, this is trick shots. I try to, like, flip the puck over the net to the person in front of the net, and just to muck it up, like, just to do something different, to show them that you're allowed to try to do things, right? So I tried to go to the full extreme that I could go to, banking it off the net, whatever, to try to encourage that. So I just I had a list, like, of things just from a research perspective, and they all kind of mean the same thing. So a few things just to coach creativity. These are some of the themes.
Well, I'll cut you off for 1 second. So if you look at the evolution of hockey, right? Bobby Orr comes into the league. There was never a defenseman like that. So if someone would have taken away that creativity, and that was offensive creativity, he would have never skated that puck up the ice. Guys would have yelled at them, "You have to move the puck. You have to go D to D." So it's like you wouldn't see Bobby Orr until someone decided that, hey, it's okay to have that, right? It'd be Gretzky. He spent his time, like, he did all kinds of different things, but he would get behind the net, and it's like, well, that's not how we play. It's like he was the most creative guy
Yeah,
ever in the
I used
history
Denny
of hockey.
Savard.
Well, there you go.
My example.
Yeah,
I remember watching him on, like, Don Cherry, one of those
yeah.
Rock'em Sock'em Hockey
Highlight reel.
VHS tapes. Yeah,
Highlight reel. Yeah,
yeah, he's sweet.
yeah. But you see what I mean? Like, if you
Yeah.
like when someone's just got it, they got it.
Yeah,
So you don't want to stifle that.
right. So a couple of the themes, they all kind of mean the same thing. So this is from a research perspective on coaching creativity. Some of the themes. So encourage playfulness and experimentation, obviously. Diverse and variable practice, obviously. Autonomy and ownership. So that's what I was saying about let them feel like they can do things where it's not restricted by you, the coach. Reflective practice, obviously getting them to think. That's what you're talking about. Supportive environment, allowing them to do it. So I had a kid last year I was coaching on his club team. He wasn't ever allowed to be a puck carrier as a defenseman, but he's like the best skater ever. He's one of the best skaters I think I've ever seen. And he was like, yeah, I've always been told I have to take the role of get back on the D side because he can skate, right? So I said, okay, like we're gonna flip that right now. So I made him top of the point on the power play. So he's got to carry the puck up on the breakout, like he's quarterback in the power play. And at the start, it was like he's turning pucks over, he doesn't know what pass to make, he can't make the reads, whatever. But I let him do it to figure it out, and he'd come back to the bench all like sour ass about not making the right play, and I'd be like, dude, I don't care. Like I don't care that you're turning it over. Figure out how to do it. Like that's why we're doing this. Go try again. Go try again. But that takes some tolerance as a coach for the turnover. You know what I mean? It takes some tolerance for the mistakes to happen, which I think is important if you're in that development thing. But most of these themes are the same thing. You know, it's all that exact same stuff, the autonomy, whatever. So one thing I wanted to go back to kind of to finish on, because we started talking about this a bit last week, is again from the coaching side, having enough time with the player for them to get what you're asking of them or what you're trying to show them. So like the whole thing you just explained, those examples you gave, that takes some conversation, that takes a relationship over time with a player for them to get the teaching points. So when you're trying to coach something like this where it's really gray and fuzzy, like there's not an answer of, hey, if you shoot more pucks you'll get a better shot. Like creativity is not like that. So you need time with the coach or with the person that's trying to teach you so that they can get some of this dialogue, get some of these conversations into your head. And that goes back to one of my like most frustrating things right now is just guys bouncing around everywhere where they don't have enough time with a person to really understand the philosophy of that coach. You know, so if I use school as an example, or your head coach for your team, if you have that coach for a whole year, so you have time to understand what their expectations are, what their philosophy is, what they're trying to say to you. And let's give it in an idealized situation, because not that it doesn't always happen. But for the most part, you have the time. You have your 2 practices and 2 games a week. You're seeing the same person. You're hearing the same voice week to week. So there can be an impact there. Like there's something that you can gain from that because there's consistency in the model. The flip side of that is also good. Like it's good to have choice. It's good to have different places you can go and people you can talk to, different coaches, and all that is also good. But in order to get the most out of any of them, you have to have sufficient time for them to teach you the thought process. So even as a coach, like if I'm with a kid that comes out every 7th skate, I'm not as invested in that kid as
So
the
you're
coach.
talking more in a camp setting or a clinic
As
setting?
a skills coach, let's say.
Yeah.
You know, or even let's say if you're a mental performance coach or you're a hockey IQ coach or whatever title you want to give yourself. If you're a math tutor, it's the same thing. It's like if you see your math tutor once every 4 months, it's like there's not enough time there for them to really get into the detail and get into the nitty-gritty about how the math problem works, you know? So it's the same thing for as a skills coach, you know, but it would be anything else. Like even with my dad, he teaches music. If you want guitar lessons and you see that person once every 4 months, but then you also go see 3 other people and they all have different styles of how they're teaching you, it can be confusing. So you're not maximizing what you can get out of any particular individual coach or teacher. It's almost like that's better later when you have enough knowledge to sift through information. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, obviously, because um, as we said in previous podcasts, is like if you're just bouncing around from a skills coach to another, like you may or may not pick up. You're probably going to get something if providing they're decent and they're bringing some value. But we were talking. So on the weekend, we were with. It was funny on this weekend. I had a couple conversations that would go to that, and actually, I was at up in Guelph on the weekend and up at Bushinger's house. So in Guelph, our billets, Charlie's billet, was just saying how she notices like how many people want to get involved in hockey, and right, because you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago. There's if you got a IQ coach, if you have this coach, a skills coach, a fitness coach, a skating coach, all these different things. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of people getting in there or trying to get in there, and words are fancy. So as one of the guys that works for me said he was at a course, and another guy was at a course, and they were talking about some of the terminology and all the stuff, and one of the, I'm not going to say the words and stuff, but they were using these really fancy terms to say basically nothing, right? But in the fancy terms, like they're let's not call them fancy terms. They're like coaching cues, let's call them. But it's like, okay, but it's just this. It's very simple. So I was talking to my kid and a couple of the guys on his team, the NHL draft picks signed and everything, and it's like they laugh at that stuff because they already know, and they can sift through. Once you've been through, like once you play the game a little bit, you can sift through who's bullshitting you and who's not. But when you're young, or when you're a dad and you want to give your kid opportunities, if you don't have that knowledge, or you haven't seen, like, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, simple terms, get to the net. Now it's net front presence, right? And that's the simplest thing I could come up with. Like, net front presence sounds like you're really smart now.
Yeah.
As opposed to get to the net.
Sorry, my favorite one's surfing.
Yeah, well, but that's a term
because it was surfing before it was flush. Before that, it was angle.
Yeah.
Before, right? So it's all the same word.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but the more you can come up with these terms, the more you can. So I was watching a clip one day because every now and then I'll go on, and this guy teaching, like, honestly, I showed Charlie. He goes, my God. So this was a hockey IQ guy, and he was talking. He stopped this drill with these young kids, and he went on for like 2 minutes about. I'm thinking, oh, this might be pretty interesting. And I looked, and all he had the kid do was take the puck from the hash mark to the top of the circle and shoot. It was a 3-minute sentence. I'm like, man, it's not that complicated. But anyways, my point to that is that bullshit baffles brains, right? So if you can talk a good game, and say things that mean nothing, a lot of people get fooled by that. So I don't know if this is going in the right direction, but to your point is that if you're with someone long enough, you can start. If someone say, okay, Andy, you think you're so good, let me spend 8 sessions with you. So you spend 8 sessions with him, you say, yeah, this guy is just like full of shit. Hasn't really actually taught me anything, right? You watch someone teach a shooting clinic, like you show the clips, and you go, it could sound like they're really getting onto something, and then the clip ends, and it's like, okay, is there anything there? But then from my perspective, I can listen. I go, okay, you're not teaching anything, man, right? So, anyways, I would suggest, like, you give someone, if you're going to go to a skills coach, give them some time, and there's a period of time where you're going to say, okay, it's really nothing, or it's a lot of bullshit, or you might find out later. So I thought it was good, but it's not. But at least you can absorb some of it and see what's real. And if you're not making any progress, then it's probably not very good.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then
it's the best way to tell.
Yeah. But if you feel like you're getting a lot of words and not a lot of substance, then it's probably a good thing. So, anyways, yes, if you spend time with someone, you're going to find out if they're real. If you spend time with someone, you're going to find out if it's true. You're gonna find that you're gonna have improvement in certain areas, and it might not be as fancy as you think, or it might be. I don't know. And if you only spend 1 session with someone, like, that's one thing I don't like, is when someone, when we're doing, let's say we have a 12-week program, and we have a drop in once or twice or 3 times in those. It's like, so let's say you're coming in and we're at the end of or right in the beginning of something that we're teaching, and it's a progression. So if you're right at the beginning and that's your first day and you're a pretty good player and you can do that part, then it's like, okay, that necessarily wasn't the best thing for me.
I'm not going to go back to that.
Right. But if you come at the end and you can't do the beginning of it, then it's just like, well, that's a little bit harder. It's like, I think I did okay, or you're not getting the benefit of it. Yeah. So that's why I would say stick around with someone for a while to see if it's good stuff and what you're getting out of it. And so
those are two sides of the same coin, which I don't really understand that saying. But in order to get the juice out of the person, if there's some there, then you need to give them time to explore that. Like, if you come out and skate with you once, you don't have enough time to have all this conversation, which over 12 weeks you do, right? Or at least you have much more opportunity to. So for the kid that's engaged and wants to learn, that's where you're going to get it. It's time under tension, man. That's what it is. That's the law. So on the coaching side, if you want to have enough time to relay your message, you also need that. You know what I mean? You need that session after session, hour after hour, where you can get to the point, because most things are a teaching progression. So for this group of girls that I'm every single session that I have with them on the ice, I'm tailing in the theme of creativity. I'm tailing in the theme of passing. I'm tailing in the themes of wall work. I'm tailing in the themes of battle, because that's what their coach said they need some focus on. Those are the weak spots. So it's like, okay, I know that. Now I have a program that's designed with those themes every single session. So for 8 weeks, I can guarantee that every single girl that's there will be able to take something. They'll remember something I said at some point, whether it's in the gym or on the ice. I got them 3 times a week in the gym. I got them once a week on the ice right now. They'll remember something to do with those themes when we speak, or when they move on after the program's over, right? So it's important that you give that time. So as a coach, as a trainer, this is again why when you design whatever the program is, like, this is something I'm going to definitely move more towards in the future when I have control over it, is you're either in for the program or you're not, right? You're either in for it or I'm not doing it. And it's not, this is where you have to make obviously you have your stance on how much the money matters from a business perspective versus the quality of what you want to do. Because you can't, if you do both, then it's a double dip, man. You can't have both and it work the way you want it to work.
I have two, more than two, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, two instances where exactly this is gone. I've had a player who is going into junior, who's a good player, that has spent a lot of time with us and with me. I have another player who's a good player, who's a year or two younger, so he's like a Bandom, looks like a good player, appears like it, and he's only been out now. It would be 6 times with me, and that started this year. And so the player yesterday, the junior player, he's really evolving now, right? Good, smart player. He's got all that stuff. So as we were doing one drill, I pulled him aside. I said, that shot there, you're getting it off just a little bit late. And I said, if you can just understand what you did on that shot. I said, I know you're getting it now. Because it takes time. It takes time. You're not fixing a guy's shot or everything in 6 sessions. So I said, do you notice when you got there, you're ready to shoot. You dusted it off once, twice, and you see that goal, you just pull out. Then you pulled it back a bit, you shot, and it was a good hard shot, but I said he was there. So now watch him shoot, because you're almost there. I said, when instead of just dusting it off once or twice, it's there. Shoot. Keep your feet moving. Shoot. Because you're telegraphing there. And I said that at this level of the game, you will never score a goal, or you very rarely will score a goal. Next shot came down, perfect. Next shot, perfect. It just, he got it because he's heard the words, the terminology. And now he's able to look at some players that are around, and it was magic yesterday. It was just like bang, it clicked in. Okay, so that was one. On the flip side, the kid that's maybe 14, been out a few times, and he shoots the puck fairly hard, but it's the classic like long wind up. It's outside his body. It's okay, but it could be like 100 times better. So I pointed out the first day that you shoot well. Like, you shoot fairly hard. You're big and strong. There's all these other things that have to come into it. So every day he's like, are we going to do more shooting? Are we going to do more shooting? And he's like, wants to get it today, but it's like, I don't even know you. You know what I mean? And we got all these other things to do, but like, this is going to take time. So if you leave this session after, I think we got 3 more weeks left, two times a week, and we touch it, let's say once a week for half an hour, you're only starting to scratch the surface. In fact, you might even get more confused because we're going to correct a whole bunch of things. So you might even get more frustrated. So it's like a long period of time. Like I tell a lot of people, like, if you want to shoot like some of my junior guys or good midget guys or U16 or whatever it's called, pro guys and stuff, it's going to take like, especially a couple different shots to get it done perfectly. It's not going to take you a month. It's going to take you possibly 3-4 years, 2, 3, 4 years. So you can't get too frustrated because you got to go through the mental hurdles. You got to teach your body what your brain's thinking, and you teach your brain what your body's thinking, right?
Yeah. No, those are good examples. Who are the kids? I'm just curious. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I nailed it.
Really?
Yeah, I nailed it.
Freaking right.
Which is like, and it was like, okay, man, that's good shit. And he was like proud, eh?
Good.
You could see the lights going. And the other one was that.
Oh no way.
Yeah, like the young guy. He was like, okay, I want to. like, are we going to work on shooting? I said, yeah, but he wants it now.
How is that kid?
He's okay. Yeah,
Is he?
he's actually powerful, good, like, raw.
Yeah, raw.
So, but he's never been. You could tell that he shoots pucks like, the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
classic, right?
Yeah, interesting. So I guess my final piece on that is those are two great examples of where that can be helpful from a skill building perspective. So, and those are things that, like, I would argue again for something like shooting, it's much more linear. It's much easier to see because it's obvious. You know, when you get to something like how to read a play, I would argue that takes even longer to develop because it's not so obvious. So unless you're really paying attention to it or you're really dialed into it, you need someone that's going to explain that shit. You need someone that's going to show you why that matters or where that happens on the ice, right? So even for me, like yesterday on the ice, there was maybe 5 or 6 moments through the hour and a half where I talked about that piece of it, and then I don't see them until next week, right? So it's not that much time. So in order for the message to sink in, and this is another maybe tip for coaches, like you have to let the message sink in, keep repeating the message, and you have to understand that it's a process for them to understand and learn it. Because they're gonna walk out and they're gonna forget 90% of the things that you say. Like I get caught with this all the time, man. Like I take for granted some of the guys. Like I made 2 meal plans on the weekend, and one of the kids, I've talked to this kid about nutrition a million times, and I know the information extremely well. I can't project that he's going to understand it, not necessarily to the level of depth that I understand it, but just that he's going to retain it from talking to him 4 or 5 times. It's like it took me years and years and years of studying this stuff for it to set in, you know? So I can't just say, well, I've said it to you 5 times. Like, why do you not get it yet? You know? So as a coach, that piece of it can be frustrating because you want them to just know what you know, but they just don't know it yet. So it takes some patience on the coaching side, but it's important that you have that time. That time is huge, man. And then for parents, it's like if you have a resource, if you have a coach, if you have a trainer, if you have whatever, try to do your best, especially early on, is stick to a program, man. Like follow an actual program. So if you sign up with whoever, first of all, understand, is it a program or is it just they are just designing the session on the fly and there's no like thought going into what we're doing? Because that's an issue in itself. But try to see a program through, man. Like you can't buy a fat loss program and do it for 2 weeks and stop. Like it's not gonna work. You can't do a strength and conditioning program for 2 weeks, man. It's not gonna work. You know. So jumping in on a workout here and there is not how you build habits. It's not how you build success with this kind of stuff. You know. So if you want that to work, you need to make sure you invest time in the process. It's not just I'm scared to miss something, so make sure you go to one of everything. You know, because that's how shit conflicts and overlaps, and you don't know what the goals are. So you need to understand what is the thing you're trying to work on. What are you trying to train for? You know what I mean? So, I think that's all I got. You got anything else you want to add on any of that stuff?
No, I mean, I think you said what you need to say. Like as far as the skill coaches go, I think if you have a good skills coach, like honestly, hockey IQ is kind of built in there without saying hockey IQ. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So that would be like a flag or a indicator. If you're doing, like, I mean, if you're going to a skating coach for the purpose of skating, that's one thing. That's not, you don't need necessarily hockey IQ. But if you're going to like a skill session and it's, aimlessly shooting, aimlessly playing whatever, and there's no teaching, like you should be able to say, if you're coming down, coming down the wall, where like what areas are the best areas to shoot in, how to shoot, where to shoot, like in general, and the reason why that is a good thing, and so that you can actually see something transfer in the game. So a lot of times when you go to skills coaches, this is the biggest frustration I have with skills coaches, is that there's not that part of it, or there's not anything that really resembles the game. It was really funny yesterday because I had a group of and that what's the one that they're having a camp this week? What age are they? They're under 13, under 12, they're
2011 to 20, yeah, something like that.
So the
under
one
13,
the one boy 13. From Ottawa yesterday during the game, it was just a simple D to D, and it went D to D in the center. It's not the highest end guys. They're good though. Went D to D in the center, and I was near him, and he goes, "Hey coach, that's what we did yesterday morning." Okay, that's good, and yeah. Now, at that level, some of them are going to understand that drill was for a purpose, and some will think it's just a cool drill. But nonetheless, that's he recognized that, so that's a good sign, right? As opposed to, I went through. What'd you learn today? Oh, I went through 5 cones. I put the puck under a dangler, and I came back. I went backwards and I spun around, and then I went through the dangler again and shot. It's like, do you know what I mean? And I'm not carving that up because there's definitely a place for that. In fact, we're going to do a little bit of that stuff today because it's good for your repetitions and, you know, your proprioception and keeping your head up and all those different things. But at the end of the day, can you apply it to a game? And I think when you're looking at your skills coaches, when you watch, is it just because anybody can set up a pattern, right? Yeah. So it's like maybe if you add something where there's pressure, or maybe you add something where there's whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess last point to your last point, because that's a good point. It's I can't stress enough like how important I think it is now to make sure that that element of where in the game does this apply is spoken to. You know, like I said, I was doing that short. It was like a pot play to a well, not backdoor, but like a seam play for a longer pass in the offensive zone, and like I'd have the shooter float like right into the hash marks, and I'm like, you're never getting a shot there. Like you will never. If the puck is low, there's going to be 3 people in the slot. There's no way you're getting a shot from there. But if you just let the drill play out and you don't stop to make that point, or you don't explain it before you start the drill, like this is where this is like a game, or this is how this could be like a game, or I want you to think of this like you would in a game, because nothing is ever a straight line in a game, man. It's a mess. Everything's just a mess. So you have to make sure that that's there, and then that probing part of asking questions to open new doors to new ways of thinking. Sometimes it's like some of those examples that I used today, like I said, I had the one girl just take the puck and follow your partner around. Just watch all the confusion that happens. It's like they've never seen that before. You know, they never thought about that. Like, I can do that. It's like, yeah, you can do that. I remember Billy Bowler was so good at that, man.
Well, it's like you know, if someone might listen to this and say, well, that's stupid, and I might even say it. I'm not saying it though, by the way. But what's another term for it? It's a pick. It's a different way of using a pick. So if you're, you know, I had a play that I used when I was when I played. I had a winger, and I had the ability to beat a guy wide and just pull him with me. So I'd start going almost behind the net to the point where the defenseman had to come with me, and his feet were turned. So I would throw it back to the dot. And at that time, for whatever, I'm not saying for whatever reason, it worked. Not every single time, but that was a play that would be used. So I had my winger when if he saw me go wide, one guy was going to the net and one guy knew just get to the dot behind me. It worked, right? Right. So that's what you do in power plays. There's picks and all that stuff. So using a screen, like all that stuff. So it's not as much as it sounds like, well, that's a ridiculous drill. Like if you're thinking about the game, it's like if you're one of those kids or coaches, you go, oh, okay, well, like maybe it's a dumb drill, maybe, but the point is that you can see that, oh, if I use one of my players as a pick, I have maybe different options.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's just to open a door.
Yeah,
make it have a new way of thinking about things. So, okay, I believe. So we're gonna go. Bye.